I have said before, and will continue to say it. Doctor Who is stupid. And I love it for that. So, does this live up to that expectation?
Inheritance. Binary. Non-binary. Binary.
Oh yes! This was Russell T Davies at his most Russell T Davies. Was it cheesy?
Just die!
Absolutely. Was the climax a bit of a Deus Ex Machina? Yep. But it was also just so much fun. And I'm not even the biggest fan of the 10th Doctor. He's like halfway down my list. But David Tennant and Catherine Tate haven't missed a beat. And there was only one moment I felt like the performance was slightly off, but I'll get to that later. For now, I want to talk about just the overall vibe. And that vibe was fun. Just everything about it was fun. I'm positive that people are going to be upset with Sonic creating, like, rules of some sort, but it was way more visually interesting than what the Sonic usually does, which is the Doctor waves it around a bit, puts it to their ear, or looks at readings, and then spouts some technobabble. This felt a lot more engaging, even if, frankly, I had no idea what was going on. Beat the Meep is incredible. I was unfortunately spoiled on the fact that the Meep was a villain, although to be honest, I don't think it ruined the experience at all. In fact, it even added to it. Seeing how manipulative the Meep was, it was brilliant. The bit in the middle where the whole episode just stopped and turned into a courtroom drama was brilliant, and was reminiscent of the Stones of Blood and its audacity to just stop the story to do something different, although in this case it did feel more relevant. Fitting, considering that was the 100th story and this is an anniversary celebration. It also had its moment of Detective Doctor, which I really loved in the early Smith era, with 14 figuring out the true nature of the Meep based on the weapons from the Wolf Warriors. And the Meep's turn was stellar, although Meep being transphobic did throw me off a little. What this episode also had was heart. The interactions between Sylvia and Donna were absolutely incredible in the way they touched on the obvious theme in this episode, which was gender identity, and I think I do really need to explore that. We obviously have the character of Rose, and it makes perfect sense to explore this theme right now. For one, it is extremely topical for all the wrong reasons, and two, the Doctor just changed gender. Or at least the gender that they present themselves as. Honestly, I would have loved to have more of this with 13, since it is a huge deal, but I'm glad that we're tackling it now. Better late than never. I also think that doing it in the first episode of RTD's return, when the most people are going to be watching, is incredibly brave and meaningful. He's basically giving the bigots a middle finger and saying, this show isn't for you. Considering just how much of this country is transphobic, and how much backlash this is inevitably going to get, it just makes me really happy that RTD decided to have this episode be the one where gender identity is so prevalent. Hold up a mirror to these people, and just maybe it will get them to reflect. Is it heavy-handed? Of course it is. I wouldn't want this to be more subtle, for the representation to be subdued and mentioned in only a handful of lines, which is what a lot of people seem to think subtle means, easily ignorable. Instead, make the whole special themed around gender identity, because it is really fitting right now. Donna and Sylvia's talk in the kitchen was absolutely wonderful, and really realistic, and realism is what RTD does best. Okay, realism when it comes to people. I've been rewatching all of Modern Who over the past year, and the RTD era is so much better than I remember. And it's all to do with the people, how fully realised they are, how developed they are, how human they are. And this scene is really reminiscent of that. I absolutely love it. So yeah, gender identity is really relevant right now. It is unfortunately extremely controversial, and so I love that it has such a strong presence in this story. I did burst out laughing at the binary, non-binary part though. That was absolutely ridiculous. But good ridiculous. Sentient universe taking the form of a frog ridiculous. Dinosaurs on a spaceship ridiculous. It's Doctor Who cheesy and I love it. It still has such heartfelt moments, including the scene directly before that, where Donna decides to sacrifice herself for everybody, but most importantly her daughter. I love it! I do have a few nitpicks about the story, which I'll go through now. Don't worry, I'll get back to being positive in just a few moments. I don't really like being negative in these videos. Some of the performances fell a little bit flat in places for me, although it may also be a directing issue. It is Rachel Talalay though, so I doubt it. For instance, when Rose discovers the Meep, I would have expected a bigger reaction.
Meep! Oh my god. Hello? Wow.
Instead it's really muted, which doesn't really make sense to me. She just met a bloody alien. There were actually a couple of scenes where the character of Rose fell a bit flat, which is sad considering I love the themes surrounding her. To come back to something I hinted at near the start, another performance that didn't really work was Tenet getting all shouty again. I'll be honest, I never liked it that much back when he was 10, and I didn't think it was that good here either.
Why does it have to be this?
The rest of the time he was spot on though. Also, the beginning was extremely weird. I think it was probably a mandate from Disney Plus or something, because everything mentioned here is repeated later on in the conversation with Shirley. I don't mind the fourth wall breaking, but it did feel out of place and unnecessary. That being said, I'm a Doctor Who superfan, so I didn't need a refresher, so maybe I'm not the best person to make judgment on it. There's a moment where they make the audience think that Wilf died, which to me is really weird. Donna uses a very cryptic phrase saying he's no longer with us. Surely she would know how that sounded. And then it's played really serious, not like it's a joke that the Doctor isn't getting what she obviously actually means. It's like that moment in the Sontaran stratagem, except it has way more weight to it and doesn't work quite as well as a result. Finally, the whole letting go thing didn't quite work. I was perfectly content with the explanation that the meta-crisis wasn't enough for one human to handle, but it was enough for two. I didn't need anything more, and what we did get didn't make a whole lot of sense. Well, that's the vibe and plot of the episode covered. Now let's move on to stuff that will impact the future. The TARDIS looks wonderful. Feels like a mashup of a bunch of different TARDISes. Tardai? Wait, Tardai? Is that the plural form of TARDISes? I don't know. But with way more space. To me, it feels most like the 11th Doctor and 5th Doctor's TARDIS fused together. I know it wasn't just the 5th Doctor, but that's who it's more tied to for me. It looks a bit sterile, but then the lights changing sold me on it again. I also think the 15th Doctor is likely to keep the bare bones of the TARDIS, but change it up slightly, which would be cool. I briefly mentioned it, but the sonic screwdriver seems like it got some updates. Not just to its look, but its function. The actual output of the Sonic seems a lot more interesting now, and so that's exciting. Despite the bigger budget, it still feels distinctly Doctor Who. I'm really happy about that, especially the use of practical effects still. I feel like 99.9% of the time, Beat the Meep would be fully CGI. But not in Doctor Who! We actually have a practical effect, which is awesome. Also, the device used to operate it looks like something straight out of Doctor Who. If it continues to be like this, then the future of Doctor Who is bright indeed. So yeah, that's my opinion on the Star Beast. Sorry for not uploading for like 9 months, by the way. I did like one video like 90% of the way through, but then my opinion changed on a lot of the stories and I felt like I hadn't done all of them justice in my script. So I shelved it and hadn't really had motivation to work on the channel since. But this definitely jump-started my motivation again. I literally wrote the script within 5 hours of the episode airing. I'm that excited.